And Chelsea Manning out of jail today after being taken into custody over a month ago for refusing to testify before a grand jury on the case surrounding WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange. But her legal battles don't end there. Already another subpoena issued will find her back in a Virginia court May 16th. So here to discuss, investigative journalist Ben Swann. So, Ben, they've already issued Manning an immunity deal if she were willing to cooperate with investigators. She said no thanks. So what's your read on this?
Well, it goes back to exactly what I've been saying about this story from the very beginning, which is that it has nothing to do with Chelsea Manning, and it has everything to do with Julian Assange. The immunity deal is essentially a way for prosecutors to say, tell us what we want to hear, tell us what we want you to say, because remember, the Assange case is hinged on the idea that Julian Assange did not act as all journalists do when passed information from a leak or from a whistleblower and then releasing that information. They want to say that Assange was able to actually coordinate with Manning to hack into the Pentagon and the Department of Defense. If they do not prove that in court, they have no case against Assange because essentially he's protected under freedom of press. And so this all comes back to the idea that Chelsea Manning is really the linchpin for the prosecution's case because they need her to testify and say that she was incapable and unable to hack into those computers without Assange actually assisting in the hacking, assisting in the removal or stealing of Pentagon information.
Yeah, but let me flip the script here. So it doesn't appear to us, obviously, that Manning would roll on Assange. She hasn't so far. But would Assange flip on Manning if perhaps he could work out some sort of plea deal with the U.S.? We already know he's desperately calling on his home country of Australia to get involved. Maybe he's getting desperate here, Ben.
Well, okay, so is that a possibility? I don't think so, and here's why. Because Chelsea Manning has already gone to prison for exactly what Chelsea Manning did. There's nothing else to flip on Chelsea Manning for. Well, what has Manning done other than steals information from the Department of Defense, steals from the U.S. government, and provides that information to WikiLeaks? She's already been court-martialed, already gone to prison, already served 7 years in prison for that, already had her sentence commuted over that by President Obama. And so there's really nothing left to get Chelsea Manning with. What's happening right now is because the government wants her to testify in this grand jury session. What they're essentially trying to do is get information from Manning that is different than what Manning has already said in the past, which is why Manning says that she's not going to testify in front of the grand jury, because she says everything I've already said about this case, I've already said. And yet they're saying, nope, come back and say more, because what they're really saying is come back and say different. Say something different than what you told us in the past. The grand jury, by the way, the only reason she's out of jail today is because the grand jury's term expired. You mentioned there's already a subpoena to do this again, which means they're going to convene a new grand jury and they're going to start the process all over again.
Right, in which case she could potentially be locked up again for another month until that expires, and you know, wash, rinse, repeat. So, like you said, after serving 7 years behind bars, President Obama had Manning's 35-year sentence commuted. Does that matter here? Is there any sort of like double jeopardy that's applicable that might save her from another type of prosecution if they decide, you know, if the government decides to drum up some other charges?
Well, what the government would have to do with Chelsea Manning is essentially be able to say, we have been able to prove there was a different crime that took place for which you were not prosecuted in the past. And that's very unlikely to happen here, again, because the government's already, for lack of a better term, kind of blown its whole wad here on this particular set of cases. What the government is trying to do, though, is it doesn't really care about Chelsea Manning one way or the other. The federal prosecutors don't care about Chelsea Manning. They want Assange. Right. That's the one they want. And so what they're really trying to do is, and this is where Manning's lawyers come in, is really punish Chelsea Manning for not playing their game by saying you must testify, you must answer these questions, you must go through this process. Because remember, I've talked about this before as well. One of the things the prosecutors are trying to do by having Manning testify is they're trying to predict what will be said in the actual trial against Assange. If they can predict that based on her answers now, they can better frame their argument and legal case against Assange. But if they don't know what Manning's going to say, and that's really what the grand jury process is about, right? It's about figuring out the case before you have to try the case. If they can't figure that out, they're going to be stuck when they actually see Manning at the trial, and Manning answers in ways that they're maybe not expecting, and that's what they're pushing back against.
So hopefully they can use Manning as a tool. So Ben, last question here is the ongoing pursuit of Manning or Assange or other leakers and whistleblowers, Ben. The U.S. government seems relentless on this issue. It's like if they can't catch you for one thing, they'll find another thing to lock you up for. Is this purely about silencing dissent or making examples of people, or what are we dealing with here?
It's revenge for the embarrassment that's been caused. Let's face it, Julian Assange has embarrassed virtually everyone in Washington, D.C. Everyone of importance in Washington, D.C. has been embarrassed by him at one point or another over the past 10 years. That's first. But second of all, it is also about punishing whistleblowers. I mean, under the Obama administration, there was an incredible crackdown on whistleblowers, an unprecedented prosecution of whistleblowers that no administration had been a part of before. The Trump administration is following suit with that. There is a desire to say you will not challenge this government and its authority and its practices in any way, or we will come after you. What is the point of having whistleblower laws in effect if they don't protect any whistleblowers? There's no protection for them. And so this is really the failure of the American people and the media in America to not stand up for whistleblowers and for the public to not have an outcry over the fact that the information provided by whistleblowers is supposed to be protected for a reason, because it affects all of our lives. And the public is not standing up and speaking out against that.
Yeah, as always, Ben, we got to leave it right there. As always, I appreciate your hot takes on this. Ben Swann, thank you so much.
Manila, thanks.
Hey YouTube, thanks for checking out our channel. We hope you enjoyed the video. We have tons of content for you just like this. For more of RT America's one-of-a-kind news and analysis, be sure to subscribe and never stop questioning more.